group with us so far today. I'll start by sharing our data. So we are up to now 610 people who have tested positive for COVID. On the positive side, that is an increase of only 6 since last week. The 610 people includes 628 total diagnoses. You'll notice if you add everything across, which is 18 people who tested positive 2 times. There were actually 8 in December, 8 in January, and 2 who we had previously reported who had tested positive twice. So by placement type, we've had 1 person in a correctional facility, 14 in host homes, 126 in intermediate care facilities, 1 in a mental health facility, 115 in natural homes, 2 in a nursing home, 6 in out-of-state placements, 50 in residential habilitation placements, and 295 people in supported living. Since December 1st, looking at this Omicron surge that we've had 176 new infections. And of these, 50 people were fully vaccinated. 38 of them had had a booster, and 12, it was too soon to get their booster. 24 had had no vaccination at all. And by fully vaccinated, what I mean is if they were due for a booster, they had a booster, or they were vaccinated too recently to have been eligible for a booster. So the people in ICFs who've contracted COVID represent about 42% of the people in ICFs. Of those people, we've had 28 deaths, but only 13 have been confirmed COVID deaths, representing about 10% of people in ICFs who contracted COVID and had a confirmed COVID death. In natural homes, the people contracting COVID account for about 12.5% of people we support in natural homes who have gotten COVID. We've had 6 deaths of those people, but 5 are confirmed COVID deaths, which represents a little over 4% of people who contracted COVID in natural homes and had a confirmed COVID death. In residential habilitation, the 50 people who've contracted COVID represent a little over 45% of people in residential habilitation who have contracted COVID. We've had 3 deaths, but just 2 are confirmed COVID deaths, representing 4% of people in residential habilitation who contracted COVID and had a confirmed COVID death. In supported living, about 31% of people have contracted COVID. Among that population, we've had 27 deaths. However, only 15 of those are confirmed COVID deaths, representing a little over 5% of people in supported living who contracted COVID and had a confirmed COVID death. So overall, of people supported by DDA, about 25% of people have contracted COVID. 68 of those people have died, but there have only been 37 confirmed COVID deaths, which represents about 6%. So in the month of January, by placement type, in ICFs, we had 9 people contract COVID, 8 people in residential habilitation, 31 in supported living, and 11 in natural homes. People who required, we have had no additional people require inpatient hospitalization. There was 1 person in January that required inpatient hospitalization. We have no people who are currently hospitalized. We did have one death in January. It was a person who had had COVID, I think more than a year ago, and seemed to have died from other causes, but is tracked as a person who had COVID and subsequently died. Um, Amongst the people, the 68 people who have died following a COVID diagnosis, we've confirmed 16 of those as not COVID related, and we are still awaiting confirmation from OCME regarding the cause of death for 15. And so the total number of people who have died from a confirmed COVID death is 37, and the last confirmed COVID death that we had was in March. Amongst provider staff, we also have seen a reduction in the new infections, adding only 4 this past week compared to 18 the prior week, 59 the week before that, 81 the week before that. So those numbers do seem to be coming down significantly. We've had 996 provider staff test positive for COVID throughout the pandemic. 61 have been reported by more than one provider agency, and we have had 10 provider staff deaths. We're continuing to see some improvement in our vaccination rates. People supported by DDA, it's an overall vaccination rate of 87%. In host homes, it's 95%. In ICFs, we'd reported incorrectly 100% last week. It's 98%. Natural homes, it's 75%. Residential habilitation is also 98%, and supported living is 73%. You'll notice the 10% increase in natural homes. So we have seen some progress there. Amongst provider staff, there's also been a slight increase, as well as with DDS staff. Both are now at 96%. So as a reminder, if people have questions, type them in the chat to everyone so that we can see them and we'll be able to respond. We did follow up with DC Health regarding tracking of exemptions, of the exemption requests. One of the challenges, the ability, I know people have requested the ability to notify employers, is that you don't indicate your employer, and on the form, I don't believe, and people change employers. And so that is not something that can be done. They've just communicated that they are working on considering each of these requests as quickly as they can. Each of them requires an independent review of the request that's been submitted. And so, overall, while there's not a tremendous number of requests that have been submitted, they do review each one individually and consider each individual request. What is being done to get KN95 masks for both people supported and DSPs? For one, I know for folks who live in the district, every person who lives in the district can get 2 masks every day from any of the COVID centers in DC. And we have a system in place to reimburse provider staff for, it was included in our ARPA plan, I think. I know it was in our Appendix K. For PPE, and so they could consider purchasing them with those. And I don't know, for each individual provider if they've been using the N95 or KN95 masks or not. And I'm not aware. I know there have been some changes on this regarding CDC recommendations, but I don't know that the DC Health what the status of the DC health recommendations is regarding masking, whether it's gotten that specific. Nelson, has there been any specific recommendation about the kind of mask beyond surgical or procedure masks?
No, there has not.
But as a reminder, the mayor did announce this week that the COVID centers in the district, there's one in every ward. The one in Ward 3 hasn't opened yet, but there will be one in every ward. And people can pick up 2 KN95 masks per day, and those COVID centers are open 6 days a week. You can see the locations near you on coronavirus.dc.gov. So the yesterday it was shared that the PPE reimbursements would only be for expenses incurred between March 2020 and March 2021. That is true for what they've requested from you, from the providers right now. What we're looking at, if you read the Appendix K, it says each year. So we just want to clarify that what was approved in terms of our spending is that we can in fact do that. Whether we can do that each year, it says a one-time payment, but it says each year. And so we're meeting with DHCF on Monday, and we may need to reach out to CMS just to confirm that each year means each year. But what they were clarifying was for the documentation we had requested from people, that would be for the first year. Yeah, so it would be helpful to clarify. It certainly would. And as I said, the Appendix K says each year. So to me, it seems clear, but I want to make sure that everyone agrees on what it means. But for now, people have received, I think, very clear instructions about what to submit so that they can get the reimbursement for PPE from the first year, and then we'll ask for the next round. So there is a question from someone regarding certified medication technicians. They can't get their certification renewal because the Board of Nursing has it closed on their site. Can anyone speak to this? Winslow, I don't know if you have any update about this. I know that we had someone from the Board of Nursing who spoke to this issue several weeks ago. And if someone recalls who that was and their contact information, we can provide that.
So it was our understanding that the majority of the certification, well, all of the certification process was online. It says they cannot get their certification renewal because the board has a closed site. Can anyone speak to that? If in fact the Board of Nursing has a site closed, that would be a DC Health customer service issue. We don't manage their site, but because we just now being informed about that, I could reach out to them and see if I could determine what's going on. But in the future, whenever you reach out to a DC government site and something is amiss, it's best to go through that agency to determine if they are experiencing technical difficulties or something similar. We don't manage DC Health site, but I will look into it and see if I can find an answer.
Do you recall the name of the person who said email her?
That would be um, at one point it was Dr. Benita Jenkins, and then there is um, I'll find the other young lady's name who manages all of those licensure issues. She actually is the supervisor of the team that does renewals and recertification for professional licensure. So let me look at that real quick and I'll post it in the chat.
Thank you. So this is just a comment, I don't think a question. Reliance on cloth or surgical masks for people supported and their DSP means greater risk of exposure for people supported. And to my knowledge, DC Health is still requiring a 14-day quarantine for people supported if exposed. Pretty inconsistent.
Hi, Director Reese. What I can say is that while the mask guidance doesn't say specifically that any specific type of mask is recommended or required, there is nothing stopping individuals from wearing a KN95 if they choose to do so. So that's an important point. If they feel that that gives them more protection, they absolutely can wear that. As for the 14-day quarantine, there is a change to the quarantine recommendations that is in final approval, and I'm hoping that that will be posted by next week.
And also, I want to thank in the chat, Baraka Dowdy posted a link for people who are in Montgomery County, which I know a number of our providers may be. It's a link for people to get KN95 masks if they live in Montgomery County. Thank you, Mahaney. Mahaney is indicating CMT speaks to Maryland and not DC. Yeah, the initials had me confused.
Yeah, well, I thought that the
We're
question
trained medication. TME is Maryland.
right, but I thought that from reading the initials, I thought the question was related to reciprocity. There is a formal reciprocity process where if you're certified in Maryland, you can seek certification in the district with out following each of the requirements for a first-time TME applicant. So that's what I read from that they were having trouble getting the reciprocity application done. So thank you, Mahaney, for that.
Oh, the Maryland Board of Licensing system was down for some time. Yeah, so not DC this time.
Bad, but even better. Thank you.
Although I'm taking from Mahaney's note in the chat, was down to mean that it's back up. It says it's back up and processing all licenses. So the person who was having difficulty, perhaps you should check back today. And just we'll be sending out a notice to people just so folks are aware. As you do know, the mayor had declared a public health emergency or reinstituted the public health emergency on December 20th through January 31st. Yesterday, she extended that through February the 15th. Excuse me. And in addition, extended the mask mandate in the district to February the 28th. District government employees who had within district agencies, we were given the flexibility to expand our telework, and at DDS we did, and shifted back to really mostly virtual provision of services and telework while our office was still open and staff were still there to see people who came in. We were primarily providing services remotely, and we will continue that just through February 4th. Our staff will be returning to the office on February 7th. And so in-person visits will be returning at that point in time. And however, when they do return, we still, if a home is quarantined or a person is in isolation, then unless it's necessary for an in-person visit to occur, then the visits would continue to be remote, virtual. Or if an agency is on a contingency staffing or a crisis staffing plan that's been approved by DC Health and or DDS, those would also continue to be virtual. And so the service coordinators, nurse consultants, investigators, QRSs will be contacting people as appropriate to make plans for whether there would be a resumption then of in-person visitation following February 7th. And the same applies. So our VR counselors have also switched to virtual for most services. They will also be returning, and they'll be following the policies of what they'll be working from our office, but they also work in a number of different community sites, including schools. They'll be following the policy of whatever location they're in regarding provision of services, either in person or virtually. Some schools, a limited number, when they reopened to students and teaching staff, had limitations on other outside staff that could come in. So this is a school by school decision. Well, it seems that perhaps we don't have additional questions. It's just 12:30, but To the extent things have changed, they've only changed. It seems to me in the last week, at least, for the better. Very fortunately, this most recent wave, while it was substantial in terms of numbers of people who contracted COVID, we've been very fortunate that a relatively small number of people required inpatient care, and that we didn't lose anyone to COVID over the last several weeks. There is a person that has an MCIS question. Can new provider authorizations be seen in the MCIS system?
Hi, Andy. This is Jared. We experienced this issue. It came to my attention just yesterday, and from what I understand, it was both on the provider side and internally that it was cured overnight. I have double checked with our staff, who are now able to see those prior authorizations. So, Amy, if this is an issue you've had this morning, um, I would say contact me directly. I'll drop my email address in the chat, but this is something that we are aware of and have cured. Again, it has been fixed for us, so I just did not know if it impacted folks externally. So reach out, check it first. If it's still not working for you, contact me at this email address.
Well, if it appears there are no more questions, people can get out and enjoy the rest of the day during which there won't be snow. Although it looks like it's going to, for the most part, pass us by, let's hope. And everyone have a good weekend, and we will talk again next week. Thank you.